Today's project is a middle terrace of 3 townhouse built at the very end of the 19th century. The house on the left hand side is an addition, so it's not middle terrace of 3 anymore. Anyway, it's got a roof space conversion, and someone has rather thoughtlessly, I suppose, fitted a kitchen into an outbuilding without upgrading it. So it's got timber and damp problems, nothing very severe. Signs of old leaking, so there is a potential problem with the lath and plaster ceilings, and the usual sort of odds and sods you get with a period property like this, weathering to the external elevations, roof coverings, external walls, rainwater pipes, etc. This is our house. Sorry about the noise from the traffic. It has 450, well maybe a little bit less, 440mm solid stone walls faced in ashlar, and the upper elevations are in very good condition, but lower down suffering from a bit of weathering and deterioration. Those stones, for example, don't look so good. So, you know, short-term repair could be made with some lime mortar, otherwise you'll have to spend a fortune cutting it out and replacing it with new stone. The wall down there is very brown and stained, which is usually a clue that there's a problem with the guttering. And up there, what you might not be able to see is, well, directly above there, there's a cast iron gutter with a horizontal crack through it, so I've no doubt that's spilling rainwater onto the wall down below. There it is, a crack in the gutter. You can also imagine this house will have some problems with dampness, simply because there's a whole pile of shrubbery growing against the front wall, so the opportunity for any moisture that gets into the wall to evaporate out has been very much reduced. I suspect, in view of its age, that there is a damp-proof course. I just can't see one. There's a little recess just inside the front door, and the plaster on the walls both sides is puffy. Quite clearly that's falling off. You can see it's a sort of modern pink plaster, so this has happened before. So there's evidently a certain amount of moisture in those walls forcing the plaster off. And there's lots of fluffy efflorescence, not effervescence. Efflorescence being deposited in the plaster as the moisture in the wall evaporates out. Looks like a bit of kitchen worktop is used for skirting boards as well, so that's not going to last very long, I don't suppose. Just inside the front door we've got this. Now if anyone knows what that is, let me know. I mean, it's a metal grate over the floor void. Ventilating the floor? I don't know, never seen one of those before. There's the front wall, behind all that shrubbery which you can see outside. I should have mentioned that there is one solitary air brick behind those shrubs, but it's not really ventilating anything anymore. There is a bit of greyness on the wall and skirting board to suggest that condensation might be a problem, allowing that mould to grow. There's lots of fittings there. The skirting boards do have little vents in them. Whether this is decoration or some intelligent person allowing some ventilation, I don't know. But if we look inside this cupboard here, there is white stuff. What's all that then? I think it goes all the way down there. Is it mould growing on a spillage, or is there evidence of dampness in there? I mean, I have probed and it is damp, but I suppose it would be, wouldn't it? And this is a shelf above, and there's more mouldy stuff growing. However, the floor, I've had a little jump on it. It feels fairly firm. It looks like there's a hint that it might have lost a bit of its surface due to woodworm. And the skirting boards don't show any obvious signs of decay either. So I think there's an opportunity to save the floor simply by clearing all the rubbish away in front of the house, digging the ground away a little bit perhaps, and letting some of the moisture escape before it gets up here. Same again, cupboard at the back of the house. And a bit of more grey, smudgy, condensation related dampness there. And the carpet here, I'm not sure this is part of a surveyor's responsibility, but that looks like it's probably the activities of carpet moths. What are they called? And that's little dead bodies, those little white things there, little dead bodies of carpet, what are they called? Beetles, carpet moths, clothes moth, I don't know. I think they've been eating the carpet. This is the bathroom, which is clearly fairly modern. Most particularly though, the bath is at that end of the room. And if we go downstairs, that's the ceiling under the bathroom. So the bath is located there. Now I've given it a prod with a damp meter and it's all dry now, but if that is a lath and plaster ceiling, it is surely weakened, and if that leaking went on for a long time, then maybe the floor joists are weakened too. This is the sort of thing we can't really tell without pulling the house apart, which we don't have the opportunity to do, so I think we can only just make a few alerts as to potential problems. Here is the back of the house, mostly made with cheaper square cut stone, but it's not really ashlar, is it? Except curiously this flank wall in here. That one is an ashlar wall, but it's only one skid of masonry deep, so that wall's 150mm, whereas all the rest are 450. Curious. And down there is the only subfloor ventilation at the back of the house. The kitchen, curiously, is fitted into this little single-storey add-on, which was presumably an outbuilding. The walls here are only a single skin in masonry. The ground outside is at floor level inside. Somebody's put a damp-proof membrane there. I mean, what's that going to do, I wonder? But under the tile floor, any damp-proof membrane there? I don't know. No functional damp-proof course in the walls, so a lovely moist environment's being created in which the kitchen units are just slowly but surely disintegrating. So I suppose really it'd be a good opportunity to take this apart and build something modern. Because this is just not habitable accommodation, is it really? There's a view of the street. I'm standing in a Velux window, and from down below the roof covering appears to be in fairly good condition, but up here you get a nice close-up, obviously, and that tile, for example, is very badly delaminated, and the roof is literally covered with little bits of tile which have come off. The tiles themselves are a bit not really very Bradford and Avon. I mean, there's a stamp on one of them over here somewhere. There it is. That says Major's Patent Bridgewater. So it's a Bridgewater tile, but a sort of a blue clay. So I don't know what they're up to, because it's not really very local. There's a tile over there by the party wall, which is very weathered indeed. And I think I saw another broken one somewhere. Anyway, what do we say? I think it's needs fairly extensive refurbishment. Does it need re-roofing, or is that going over the top? There's the chimney, which has been refurbished. You can see it's been patched up with lime mortar, but the flashings at the bottom look like they're loosening. So a bit of a storm, a bit of wind yanking those around, and they'll probably come out. So that needs attention as well. And here's the rear roof, a bit more Bradford and Avon, isn't it, with proper red clay double Roman tiles, so that's a bit more like it. Leadline valley over there, the edge of the valley. I can only see one edge, but that looks all right. A bunch of kids in the school opposite, making a racket. And there's the other end of that chimney. Same little problem with the flashings by the look of things. There's a vent there ventilating something, but the cover's come off. And there's the rear chimney up over the party wall to the other side, and quite clearly the aerial's fallen off. So whether somebody hooked it over the roof ridge like that to stop it blowing away, I don't know, but I doubt it. I suppose it's just fallen there, so it'll be blowing around in the wind and rubbing and damaging the roof covering, whereas the aerial fixings previously would have been rubbing and damaging the chimney. The property is the subject of a roof space conversion, but we can work out, can't we? There's the roof ridge there, there's an upper purlin there, that little shelf marks out where there's a lower purlin. Obviously you've just got the depth of the roof between the chimney outside and the chimney breast inside, and the chimney is of course full of holes called the chimney pots and flues, so there'll be a lot of moisture going down the flues, as a result of which the top of the chimney breast is a bit damp. That's almost inevitable, but once you go down a bit further it seems to be quite dry, so no plaster on it, so it's quite easy for moisture to evaporate out. The only access we have to the roof structure is through this little eaves cupboard at the back. So what we can see down there is that there are replacement floor joists. These are 200mm deep, so we're not relying on the old ceiling joists, which is a clue that the roof conversion has been done properly-ish. You can also see there that rigid insulation boards have been squeezed between the rafters, and can you see from here that at least two of them have fallen out. Does that help? Maybe. So yeah, not very well fitted between the rafters. I think I've seen some builders put wires in afterwards to make sure they can't fall out. There is a grey plastic underlay beneath that piece of insulation, and that's probably about as far as I can go without climbing in, and at this stage in my career I've got no intention of trying to clamber around in there. There's a couple of little damp spots on the ceiling, but what are they? We've observed that the tile covering's a bit knackered, but there is an underlay, so any rainwater that gets under the tiles should run down the top side of the underlay and off the roof. So alternatively it could be condensation forming on the underside of the underlay. I've got no way of seeing that. This is the first floor front elevation, and there's a front right corner as you're looking at it from the road, and there's some stains on the ceiling. Now those sort of crinkly patterns indicate this is a lath and plaster ceiling, and as you probably know, lath and plaster ceilings are formed by nailing thin strips of timber to the undersides of the ceiling joists, and then the plaster will be squeezed between those laths, so it oozes between them and spreads out over the top of them, and so when it dries it's hooked itself on, and then of course you have a finishing coat. But it's stained because presumably, I mean, why is it stained? Is that a result of a roof leak? And was that before the roof space conversion? I've given it a prod with a damp meter, it's all dry now. But this ceiling is going to be 130 years old, and if it's been made wet, then the laths might have rotted, and the little nails fixing the laths to the ceiling joists might have rusted. So all of that is potentially a bit loose. But you know, these things, they can be loose like that for decades and not fall. But as we like to say in our reports, lath and plaster ceilings can fall sometimes without warning, so I shall probably trot out the same thing in this report as well. And there's a bit of condensation along the top of the wall. And is that pre-roof space conversion, or is that an ongoing problem? Again, we don't really know, but I did have a little prod, and today it's dry.